So thank you, everyone. I've been in San Francisco for about two years, and it's the first time that I present. I've talked like shortly. Maybe the longest I've talked at a meetup was 5 minutes, but it's really the first time that I get the floor and I can talk. Actually, the first meetup that I went to was when I just arrived to San Francisco. That's when I met Ian and other people, and that was the start of something interesting and beautiful. And all the good things that happened to me professionally were because thanks to the community, right? So Simon mentioned that, okay, maybe my blog helped him, but some of the stuff I've done have been picked up by others, and so that's how I got known. And so it's really, I'm really touched to be able to present to the group. So, thank you all. And so I want to start by, so I've been discussing this with Simon for a while. He's been nagging me about coming and showing personal stuff, which I do on the side. And before I do that, I wanted to talk about how I got started in visualization and how I got where I am now. So I started working in visualization around 2008. I was doing stuff with processing, doing bar charts like those. I just discovered, things like Stephen Few and Tafty and stuff like this, and I wanted everything to be a bar chart. I was working in a government agency, and we were producing lots of charts which were, in my view, horrible. And so I was doing more data inquisition than data visualization, trying to normalize everything and to make everything, fit and adjust. And that's kind of when I started to discover Tableau in really the early stage. And that was really great because, in my view, you could map all of those visual variables to attributes of your data set. And for me, that was really what visualization was about. You have those complex data sets, and you can encode things, and you have bar charts all over again, and that's awesome. So I've done a lot of Tableau stuff. I had done like a lot of Tableau public stuff for a while, and that was my thing, and I started to dabble with ProtoViz. And when I got more involved with the community, there are really 3 people that I look up to, and I want to also to thank them tonight because they really helped me get in another see visualization in a different way. And those 3 guys. So Moritz, when I started being able to do my own things, I really wanted everything to be a bar chart or line charts maybe, or possibly a pie chart. And his unique style is that you can use data to create a variety of forms. And what he likes to do, for instance, is he uses a lot of glyphs or he uses data to animate and generate a lot of forms which are not boring rectangles or triangles or simple geometric shapes. And I started to work with him when I started to be very proficient in ProtoViz when that was a thing. And when ProtoViz was abandoned and we shifted to D3, it was very difficult for me to make the switch. And Moritz walked me through a couple of projects and gave me really the oomph to get there. So that was really cool. And Santiago, he really inspired me because his style is anything but all that polished and nice things that we see everywhere else. He used very vibrant colors and also style which is, very different and busy, and everything doesn't have to be, like super quiet and super sterilized. And with Santiago, I really feel that data can come alive and be less domesticated. And finally, Nicholas, so I used to work at Facebook. Nicholas was one of the person that recruited me. And before I met him, I knew of his work, and I thought, hey, I get it, but I'm not super, I don't get what all the excitement is about. And when I really get into what he's doing, when I understood it was really fascinating. In his work, nothing is too mundane, so that, nothing is not interesting as long as there is enough iteration, enough work to make it beautiful, and he can turn anything into something sublime. And so all those three people were like a great inspiration for me, and also gave me confidence that with enough work, there's nothing that cannot be done. So yeah, I said that Nicholas recruited me into Facebook. That's one of the first charts I've done at Facebook. When I see it, it makes me cringe so bad. This is exactly what a visualization should never be. So I've done it at a hackathon, so it was a night. I was on a project that didn't work, so I was kind of bored. And so all those circles are countries, and they're bound by friendship. Oh, it's like there are people in the US and people in Mexico and in Brazil and whatever, and they're friends, and so it makes a force directed graph. And I can switch them to countries, like switch them to their geographic position, and then back to a force graph. And how many friendships are there between countries? I guess many. It's not super interesting. And the thing I hate the most about it is that it looks kind of nice, but there's really nothing to it. So when I was at Facebook, I've done lots of things with the data set that I had. And so that's one of the reasons why I didn't share it, because I couldn't really do that. Which is why, contrary to what I was doing before, when I had a blog and I maintained a public presence and I tried to share my work as much as possible, for the past couple of years, I've been keeping a low profile. So some of the work that I've done during that time, I changed the data or made some stuff so I could share it. So almost all of the stuff which I'm going to show tonight, I either put on my GitHub or will post on my website shortly. So one of the things I really geeked out about during my time at Facebook was first names. The reason why is that we had such a great data set. First names, when you create an account on Facebook, it's one of the things you're the least likely to lie about. So we had access to everybody that ever created an account, so that's like 2 billion plus people. And it's not an information which has a lot of practical use, but for somebody who's curious, that's kind of cool. So I'm going to show you 3 projects I've done around first names. Okay, I think we got it. Right, so this one, it's kind of small. So let me talk you through this, and then I'll zoom in to show cool stuff. So what it is that I took the 10,000 most popular first names in the US, and for each of those names, I look at everybody who has that name and check their age and whether they are a man or a woman. And so on the y-axis, it's the average age of people with a name. On the x-axis is how many of them are men or women, right? So most first names are kind of polarized. Like those are super feminine, like a Maria, and those are, John, David. Most Johns are actually guys. And there's only a few who are in the middle. Like this is Angel or Angel. And so here there's an interface to explore things. So for instance, let me try to zoom in a bit. So for instance, names that end with IA, they tend to be women's names, and names that ends with IO, they tend to be men's names. And well, this is one of the things I'm going to share, so you guys can play with it and explore. But it's kind of interesting to see, for instance, what's in the middle. So you can do things such as those names and yeah, figure out what they are. Even I can see. Anyway, bunch of first names: Jamie, Vicky, whatever. Those are neutral first names. So interesting data set. That visualization is kind of basic, but it's playful to explore. Here's another one I've done on first names. About a year or so ago, I saw this on Reddit. A guy had done a map where he had plotted what were the most common first names in a given location on the map, but the data source that he had were not very reliable. And I thought, well, I have a much better data source, so let me try to come up with a map of my own. And so that's what it is. So here, every color is a different first name, and it shows the first name which is the most popular on that exact place on the map. So the map is divided into a bunch of little squares, and we can just explore. So in the US, we see there's a bunch of Johns, surprise, and Davids and Michaels. We in San Francisco, we live in David country. And you can just, click it. And what's kind of interesting is that I purposely didn't draw borders on this map because the first names tend to skip borders. So for instance, if we go towards Southern California, we see Jose, and we're going to see Jesus, or Jesus. And yeah, for instance, I didn't know that there was that many Lucas in Brazil. And there's a bunch of cool stuff. So for instance, in Korea, the most common first name is Kim. And this is just because it's one of the most common last names, right? And there's enough people who went to their first name as a last name so that it shows up as the most common first name. Just like in Vietnam with Nguyen, which is such a common last name there that it also appears as the most popular first name. So yeah, it's a cool map. So in France, where I'm from, it's Nicholas and Marie, and they're just kind of local. But yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff to explore, and this one is also made available. Last one on first names. That's a different view of a similar data set. So I've taken the 100 most popular first names in the world, and I'm plotting where they are. So I don't know if you guys can see from here. So here we're showing in red the Johns, in green the Juans, and in blue the Ivans, or I don't know exactly how you're supposed to say it in Russian, but the size of the circles show the number of people who are either one of those first names. And if there are, Johns and Juans in the same place, it gets kind of yellowish. And there's lots of stuff that we can explore. So there's one that I like. I also like to check, let me do it like this, start from scratch. Right. Yeah, we can compare the Muhammad's with the Muhammads, and this is also Muhammad, and it's the same name, but depending on the lens you look at it, in different countries they would tend to spell differently. So yeah, this is like a map of all the different spellings of Muhammad's in the world. And there's a bunch of others like this. So for instance, we can compare the Sarahs without an H. It's important with those with an H. I mean, so in the US, we're mostly Sarah with an H. This is why at the Starbucks, they tend to write it anyway. But in every Latin country, the H drops pretty much. Well, when I was working on those slides, I kept playing with this forever, and this one I also released it. So it's one of the datasets which I fudged, so it's not actual data. It's kind of actual data. Or maybe it's actual data. No, it's not. Maybe it is. But I mean, it's not data from Facebook. Not anymore. All right, new set of projects. New Year cards. So I started doing that 3 years ago. I mean, this is the third year I've been doing visualization in cards. Benjamin, do you mind if I show the one I sent you? It's a rhetorical question. It's already loaded. So that was the first one I've done. And how it works is that I took all the emails that we had written one another and the tweets and all this. And in all of them, I took the most unique 3 words. And I made those little comments out of it. It's impossible to read everything, but that's not the point. But when I look at it, I get a glimpse of stuff that we talked about at some point. Workshop Friday. Well, now I kind of don't remember anymore what it was about. But when I had just done it, when I saw it, I kind of reminisced of the year that had gone by. And each card was personal and represented my relation to the person that had seen it. And also because it's all made out of private conversations, it's also why I don't share it and why I haven't shared it. And I've continued to do something similar the next year. So actually I've made 2 models. This is my friend Merlin. I also made cards out of the conversation that we had. So I was like deeply at Facebook then, and all my word was Facebook. She works at Facebook, she still does. And so she's actually made out of all the messages that we sent. I mean, it's totally impossible to read. I mean, even if you held it really close, it's exhausting and you can't follow, but we know it's there. And Merlin and I, we exchanged maybe 20,000 messages that year because we work closely together. And it's kind of interesting. It's, again, one of those things, it's impossible to read in sequence, but when you look at it, you can get a glimpse of some decent conversation that we had, and it's kind of cool. And I made another one that year. Okay, this one I gotta zoom it somewhere or another. This one I designed for print, and so I made it like super high res, but I'm not super happy with it. Anyway, this is still the same idea, message or emails that we sent, I don't remember which. And that was an interesting part. I had a service that's recorded every day during the whole year. How many times I like his stuff, how many times he liked my stuff, how many times I commented on his stuff. And the query still runs because they can't kill it without me. So it still counts for whoever is going to check that table, how many people like my stuff or how many stuff I like. And so I kind of like that sequence of circles that represent a mixed activity. And this year, I've done something super different. They were still data generated, but with much less personal stuff, so I put them all on Pinterest. And also, they were printed and sent, so they were physical objects. So they kind of look like this. Yeah. So this is the card I sent to Liana, my girlfriend. And they're all based on the names, and mostly based on the initial of the name. So I found a pattern that corresponded to each letter. And so, for instance, I used this loop for the L, and I did like one layer for the first name and one layer for the last name, and used different parameters that I found from the letters of the name to generate something. So since her initials are L and L, she got 2 L's. And well, this is I made them all in D3. That was honestly a mistake. Initially, I thought, let's do that in processing. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to use a lot of SVG. It's easier for me to make them in D3. But it wasn't fun to do it in the client. It crashed a lot. Yeah, so if I type my name, it will find a pattern from the first, my first initial, and then figure out the rest of the colors and resize it and tilt it. And so when I decided to do it like this, I started to research patterns, and I knew that I needed at least as many patterns as I was going to send, as initial letters that were in my address list. And so when I first started doing that, that seemed like a lot. And then I became totally obsessed with it, and I made hundreds, and I had to select the ones that I really wanted to keep. So I went to iteration. And yeah, so those are the ones that I kept. So those are the cards. This is how the names were distributed, right? And nobody that has a Q as an initial responded. So I wrote to a bunch of my friends, say, hey, do you want a card? If you do, fill the form with the address. And I asked them a couple of questions. I asked them where they lived and where people are from and where they were born, because I wanted to make that map. And I wanted to see how much my friends had traveled. And so a lot of the people I know, and that's kind of interesting, because it's like me, they come from a bunch of different places in the world, and at some point I'll move to San Francisco. Yeah, I heard that story before. And one of the most interesting part of the form, and I saw it as a red herring because I knew from the start that I wanted to do something based on the names, because it's something that I'm kind of fascinated with. I put a free form where people could tell me whatever they wanted. And the first few people that filled the form told me things which were deeply personal. And then afterwards, it was more trivial, like, hi, hey, Jerome, Happy New Year, whatever, which is still, good to know. But I had like the craziest things that had been told to me. And I thought, okay, do I want to do something out of it? I didn't want to expose the whole sentences because this is very intimate. So I did that kind of funny word cloud. I'm not a huge fan of word clouds, and that kind of went against my nature, but I thought, hey, if I just use 2 angles, like straight and 30 degrees, I could have and a very thin font, I could have something which is kind of cool. So there it is. Yeah, I'm trying to find a trader's word. All right, I'm not gonna find it. So when I was making the patterns, some I hand draw them, and I kind of digitize them or try to replicate them in SVG. Some were more simple shapes. I thought, we needed like a good old circle at some point, or this, that X, that kind of thing worked kind of well, or the M as well. But at some point, I became like really obsessed with all the Arab geometry and the patterns that they have in the mosque and stuff like that. Actually, it all started where once we're having a weekend in Portland. It was raining a lot, and the only thing we could do was to go to a bookstore, and I found a book about that, and I was like, okay, I'm done. So I incorporated a few of them there, but to make them, I like made an editor. I'm gonna show you. It's kind of cool. I mean, if you're a nerd. So you could do stuff like this and like draw lines, because most of those patterns are constructed with a ruler and a compass, and it's based on all those intersections. I'm not going to do the whole process, but I had that thing built so I could build them step by step, just like the ancient Arabs did. And actually, so this is something I unearthed. I thought I didn't finish it, and I actually didn't finish it, but it's kind of working nicely in the state it's in. So this shows how you would draw one of those patterns, step by step. So you can try this at home. All you need is a compass and a ruler, which is, and to mind where the lines cross. So interestingly, making those shapes is with a computer is much easier to do without doing any of this yet. Like, it's kind of easy to figure out where those lines cross without doing any of that. But I kind of like the aesthetics of that ancient way to draw. So that's it for the cards. So when I was at Facebook, I did a bunch of maps. I'm going to show you some. This is like kind of a boring map of all the users. It's one of the first things I've done. There are more and more users. And it's actually a GIF, which is its only redeeming factor, I guess. But it's what it is. So I'm basically just showing them for the aesthetics, because I don't remember what they're about. But they're kind of cool. What was interesting was that I had access to very precise location of a huge number of people with some information about them. I think this one is about the average age of whoever lives in a specific pixel. So red is younger and yellow is older. And surprisingly, we Europeans are old compared to people in India. And this, I think, is just a different version of it. This one is actually kind of cool. This one is about me. And what it shows is the average distance in terms of France that I have with people who live in different places. So people in France, on average, they'll be my third friend, like friend of friend of friends, or better. And likewise, people in San Francisco, a lot of them are within 2 or 3 degrees. But the darker you get, the more jumps you have to do. So another one, and I don't know what it represents. And another one, and this one is smaller for whatever reason. Anyway, they look kind of good. And this one I'm not sharing because it's kind of sensible data. This one is one which I've This project, I actually shared it some time ago, but I like it, so I'm showing it again. So I live in San Francisco, and sometimes I go places, and I go back, and I'm like, okay, should I turn left or right? In most cities, it doesn't make any difference, but not in San Francisco, because you could find yourself having to climb a huge hill, and it's awful. So, for instance, let's suppose that I start by my house. All right. By clicking here, I've removed from the map of San Francisco all the streets that will never be on the shortest path from my place to anywhere else. So rationally, I should never walk those streets. And this is like the best path. By the way, there's a problem. I mean, it's not supposed to look like this. There should be colors. So I'm probably missing a file somewhere with the elevations of everything, because it should, I mean, I'll look into this. Anyway, it works on my site, and it's not a new project, so let's skip it. And so I've made a derived project from this. It's still San Francisco. Most of you will recognize this. And I haven't invented that design. I saw it in a book, and I thought, hey, I should reproduce it. So what this does is that if I click, and I'm going to, again, click on my house, it's going to, again, calculate the shortest path from my place everywhere, and make the lines, the thickness of a line represent the number of those paths that goes to that specific street. And it's really interesting to see how different that tree would look depending on the starting point, right? So if I was living in a Mission or whatever, I mean, why not? It takes some time. Oh, come on. Yeah. A Embarcadero or something. I actually don't know if it's done stuff, because it's kind of computationally intensive, but I don't know if I clicked right. Yeah, I mean, I like the organic look. So I kind of wanted to do a bunch of cities like this. So I've done Portland. I mean, it's what it is, but it's kind of cool. And actually, I wanted to do Paris, but it was really too difficult. It doesn't look good. I mean, well, if people here know how to manipulate OpenStreetMap data well, I'm open to suggestions, because it's not my forte. But anyway, so I just wanted to show that aborted project. Yeah, here's the latest map that I've done. So it's baseball season again. For me as a European, it's mind-boggling that a team that is associated to a city could be bought or whatever, or change names or move to another city. And it happened time and time again. So I made that thing that starts from the humble beginnings. I mean, I made it start in 1917 because that's when NHL started, but the baseball stuff started long before that. And yeah, it shows like all the stuff that happens over time. I mean, we can play it and make it automatic. And yeah, with all the different stuff that happened, and then we can click on the various teams and see what happened to the San Antonio Chaparrals. Yeah, my favorite team of stuff. Actually, damn it, I'm trying to get the Oakland A's, they've been all over. I mean, you guys probably know that. Before I started the project, I wasn't a huge expert on baseball. But yeah, they started in Philadelphia and then Kansas City, and yeah. So a bunch of teams like this. And on this project, what was kind of difficult was to make various teams of teams that were supposed to be in the same city not overlap each other. So there's a slight force-directed thing going on there. Anyway, this one, I still feel it needs a little bit of polish and niceness before I share it, but it's kind of cool. And oh yeah, the data set for this, wouldn't that be nice if I just could go to sports.org and download it? No, it was all by hand. I had to research all this by hand and collate it. So there's tons and tons of records because nobody centralized it. All right, we're near the end. This is the last project, dating age. Another great thing at Facebook is that people that are in a relationship, when they declare it, it's often true. I mean, unless they're 13 years old, in which case it's not true. But you know, when somebody is like 32 years old and say that they're married to someone, and that person says, yeah, I'm actually married to that same person, it's legit, I mean, most often. And so the story of that project is that I had a couple of years ago, I did that query a couple of years ago. I had a friend, and she was 39, and she had broken up with her boyfriend, and she said, well, I'm done. I mean, guys my age, they date 20 years old, so I'm finished. I'll never find somebody. And so I looked at the data, and I said, you're going to be fine. You're 39 years old. Everything is possible. So, damn it, that's not what I want. Yeah, so I've done these charts to explore the distribution of dating ages from, okay, so let's suppose that I'm 24 years old, and that's a good hypothesis. It's not true, but close. So yeah, so that's how the ages of my romantic partners are distributed, right? So yeah, 15% of my dates, I mean, 15% of the couples with somebody who is 24 years old are with someone who is 24 years old. And it's kind of narrow. I mean, it's 23, you know, but it doesn't go much further. And I can vary the age to 30, so I'm 39, so now you know. I mean, so that's, so for me, and I can change my gender. So I can say I'm a guy. So that's how likely it is that I would date, you know, somebody at a different age. You what, 25? Well, yeah. Kind of. I mean, it's easy to go wrong in this one. Yeah, so to make these charts, like there's one little detail that I was really happy about, because I wanted to have that effect when I would mouse over to have a column that would be highlighted. But because both of those charts are normalized, they have the same area, there's one time when they're going to cross. Every possible combination, it's not possible that one is always under the other. At some time, they're going to cross. And so I was wondering, which one should I draw first or second, or how am I going to handle when they're going to cross? So what I've done is that I'm using hatches, and the one below has white. I mean, this one has white hatches, and the pink one has pink hatches. But they're kind of, there is they don't exactly start at the same time, so when you're beneath both of them, they kind of superimpose and make something solid. So it doesn't, yeah, it feels right. So this one is also one where I totally changed the data, kind of. I mean, some. I actually did change the data. Not a lot, but it's not exact data, so which is how I share it. And that's actually it. Yeah, I was looking for a good picture of Santiago, whatever. So yeah, that's it.
Projects where you are watching a lot of data into the browser, so you did all of those using d3.SVG? Like for instance, the photo made of text. What were you using there?
Oh, so the photo made of text, I had done it in processing, and it's actually an image. It's a static image. But for the maps, well, the one where I went through briefly, they were quickly, they were also done in processing, but the maps with the first names, they were using Canvas. There's just no way. You could do it in SVG, but the interaction would be slow. Yeah. And I think when you have a map with a bunch of data points, Canvas should be the default choice. It's so much easier. All right.
So do you do any bar charts these days?
Yeah, in my day job, it's all about the bar charts. And I work in a small startup called Dato, and I'm working on a charting library. And that's something I kind of wanted to do for a while. And it's interesting problems. So what I'm supposed to do is to have those JavaScript functions, and you thread it data of any shape and size, and we output a good-looking chart. And so we deal with problems like labels overlapping and sizing and stuff like this. And it's tricky to do right. But yeah, they look better than they did in processing, for sure.
Interactivity in your Canvas.
Excuse me?
How do you deal with interactivity in Canvas?
Yeah, so in that one example, the maps with the most common first name, I have an event listener. Actually, I have two, one for mouse over, one for click, at the level of the canvas, and I look at. I just get the coordinates, X and Y coordinates. There's another project where I actually look at the color of what's underneath the cursor. And if it's something where I color everything differently based on the data, I can also read that. By reading the color, I can hash it to something which is interesting. And that's how I do it. But it's much easier to do it with SVG. So that's the trade-off.
Thank you, Jerome.
All right, thank you.